Hey there, this is Amy Chaplin coming to you from pianopantry.com to talk to you about an amazing tool called Evernote. Evernote is one of many programs out there that's designed to help us organize many areas of our life. However, I find many people I talk to really don't understand its functionality and aren't utilizing it to its fullest potential. One of my passions besides piano and cooking is organization and productivity. I'm continually looking for ways to improve, streamline, and simplify what I do on a daily basis. I've been using Evernote since 2012, and I can't say enough about what it's done for me both personally and professionally. As an independent music teacher, I know how incredibly overwhelming it can feel to keep track of all the people, planning, and materials we manage on a daily basis. I've been dying to share not just why teachers should use this program, but give you an in-depth sneak peek at how I use it as an independent music teacher. In this video, I'm going to show you how I use Evernote to track everything from student history to repertoire, recital lists and ideas, items I need to order, details from my newsletters, web clippings, PDFs, conference notes, and more. Evernote is my one-stop organization shop. So let's get started. Welcome to Evernote. This is my Windows desktop client, but what I love most about Evernote is that it's cloud-based, so it has a corresponding app I use on my iPhone and iPad on a daily basis, as well as access directly on the web. Think of it as an online filing cabinet where you can save everything in multiple types of formats. I'm just going to show you quickly an overview of how it's laid out. So there's 3 factors to consider in the way that it's set up or organized. There are notebooks, there are individual notes, and there are tags. So notebooks, notes, and tags. Notebooks are like a filing cabinet. Notebooks then contain a collection of notes, and then specific notes are labeled with specific attributes or tags. So you could put more than one attribute on each note. I keep everything in one notebook. So if I open this up, my notebook is titled Filing Cabinet, and I have 2,893 notes in it. I then use tags to organize everything, and I'll share in another video why I think tags are better to use than having multiple notebooks. You can see all my notes listed here include the title, the date it was created, the notebook that it's in, and the tag that it's given. And there's various things that you could view up here, including like the date that the note was updated or whether or not the note has synced or not. So different ways of viewing all of that. You can view the note like this with a preview pane, or if I double click on the note, it will open up in a separate window, like that. Within this note, you can see a variety of formats that it can hold, including text, audio, you could record audio, videos, you could attach a document from your computer. It integrates with Google Drive. You can set reminders for the notes, you can share the notes, print the notes, all kinds of different things. You can even change the text. So I know you're really curious now to see how you could use this as an independent music teacher, so let's move in and talk a little bit more specifics. I essentially divide my Evernote into 3 overarching areas: personal, professional, and studio. I'm going to touch the types of things I consider professional, but we'll go in depth into how I organize the studio portion of my notes. Under the professional tag, you can see I nestle tags that relate to specifically what I do on the professional level, such as my blog, conference sessions, my Indiana Music Teachers Association board, judging, the Lutheran church I play at on Sundays, marketing, productivity, proposal brainstorming, resources and updates for sessions that I give, and quotes and jokes. And you see the quotes and jokes one is actually the tag that I use for this note right here. And then I use those quotes and jokes as references for when I'm writing blog posts or doing a session or something. Under Studio, I'm going to close that tag. So these are just nestled, basically. You can nestle tags in multiple levels. Under Studio, I include apps, binder, so like items I might have to do with my students' lesson binder, teaching chord charts, coaching. This one's kind of a mumbo jumbo I need to clean up, but that happens sometimes. Collaborative playing, Under composition, I want to show you an example of something I've clipped here. There was a blog post on Music Teachers Helpers blog called A Musical Mother's Day Card. And when I read the post, I thought, well, that would be a great composition activity someday, but specifically I thought of a couple of students, and so when I clipped it, I tagged it not only under composition, but I tagged it under the student's name. So when I come down to this student's tag here, that exact same link or that same note is going to show up under the student, and it's not a duplicate, it's the exact same note, but it just will show up under multiple locations. Okay, so that was under composition. I clip ideas to use for my students' music lab time. And here's an example of a useful thread on Facebook. That was about connecting to MIDI that I came across, and I thought, oh, you know what, this is super useful. I might need to reference this sometime, so I just did a screenshot off of Facebook there. Evaluations. So I have a note here that I keep track of from year to year. So when it comes to evaluation time, I know exactly what I need laid out before my parents arrive for evaluations to make it go smoothly, questions I need to make sure that I cover, and then as I'm going through the evaluations, at the end of it, I'll make a note of things that I might need to follow up with after the evaluation time. Okay, so let's see. Oh, one other example under here, for example, for evaluations is this was an article, I don't know, in maybe the AMT magazine or something. I was reading it, and I'm, sitting on the couch in the evening, and I'm thinking, oh, this is a fantastic example, of an assessment, and I really want to remember this, but, how am I going to remember this? It's in a magazine. So I just took a photo of the page and then tagged it under evaluations, and now that will always show up for me to reference. When I plan my group classes every 5 weeks or so, I often come here for ideas that I've clipped from the web to help me plan. I have a tag for improvisation, incentives, and one of the notes I have in my incentive tag is prize box items. At the end of the year, I have my students write down their favorite prize box items, and I just keep track of them, which helps me, as I'm buying things throughout the year. I also linked to the Oriental Trading Company. This is a website that I forget about all the time for some reason, and so having the bookmark link here will just help keep it in my memory. I have tags for interviews, for lesson planning, and let me just make a note here that I know some teachers probably use Evernote for lesson planning, and I actually do not. Not that it may not work, I just have an Excel spreadsheet system that currently works really well for me, and I use Evernote mostly for tracking student history, as you'll see here in a moment. And so, lesson planning, my lesson planning tab isn't lesson plans, it's just about lesson planning, basically. Okay, so memorization, I've got music education, my newsletter, and I'm just going to go in a little bit of detail here on how I organize my newsletter. Note here how everything is alphabetized, but at the very top, the notes that come first are those that use symbols. So this is one way that Evernote orders alphabetically. Symbols come before numbers, and numbers come before letters. And so I use this just to kind of help me order my tags the way I want to see them. So at the top, I have a star next to the history of my newsletters, and you can see my newsletters from this year. I go by month, and then I just have the overarching topic and then specifically what I included. Last year, I think I did then link to the specific newsletter in my MailChimp campaign as well, so I could use it for quick reference if I needed. And then things at the top here I have are things that I use on a regular basis. Like every newsletter, I need to know who my students' birthdays are. And so every August when I do registration, I go in and confirm everybody's birthday is listed correctly, so I have it to reference each month when I do my newsletter. And this is kind of like a just general idea of things to include in your newsletter. And then the rest of the notes are just interesting things that I think would be great to include for education, student and parent education. Here's a video about grit from Angela Lee Duckworth. It's a TED Talk, clippings of things with the benefits of music study and so forth that I might include someday. So there's always something there ready to go to help me do my newsletters quickly. All right, so my next tag is order, and this is like books or things that I would like to order. An example here is when I was in Boston in August doing the training with the Gordon Music Institute. Marilyn Lowe recommended, I think it was Marilyn, it may have been somebody else there, but they recommended a book. And I thought, oh, I would like to order this someday, but I'm just going to take a picture of it. And then I tagged it under order. And so that's an example of how the mobile app can really work for you just as well. And you can even show me where I was at when I took the picture. Location services. Okay, so one other thing. Let's see, was there something else in this one? No. Okay, so performing, philosophy of teaching, policies, recital ideas. Like here's an example. I went to a conference session at NCKP 2 years ago that was about, recitals and different types of recitals. So I tagged my note not only under conference sessions, but I also tagged it as recital, so I can reference that note in 2 different places now. Okay, so registration, repertoire. This is kind of one that's gotten out of hand a little bit too. Rhythm, sight reading, ideas for my studio website, summer camps, teaching aid projects. This is my 3rd one that's out of hand, but no worries. Most of the time I try to go through Evernote every couple of months and clean things up a little bit. But my teaching aid projects tab is the place where I throw things that, online that I see. I'm like, that would be really fun teaching aid to use with my students someday, but I don't have 2 hours to sit down and cut it out and laminate it and stuff. And it's not urgent, so I just tag it as that, and then I can come back in here when I want to get some new teaching aids and see what's there. Okay, so teaching terminology. This is you might find this kind of funny, but things that I want to remember, like literally terms to use as I'm talking when I'm teaching. Like I want to try to use the word again instead of one more time when I'm talking to students about, repeating sections. The idea of using the hermit crab image as a curled pinky. I love Bradley's "so washes when in doubt, pent out." So these are just like terminology for me to help remember. And then let's see, technique and transfer students. So, okay, we're going to come back to this big one here, students active. Okay, so I nestled under the tag students active every single one of my students. Now notice that all of my students' tags start with the letter S. There's a reason that I did this. It's so whenever I come in here, if I were to type the letter A, everything in my tags that's available would come up. That's A. That has nothing to do with the studio necessarily. So by typing, S and then A, only the names of my students come up. So it's just kind of my way of keeping it together. Let's see. Okay, so in this student, I'm going to show you several different types of things that I clip under student files. So every student has their main note, which is started with a star so that when I alphabetize it, it's listed at the top of their notes. I write down their grade, what school they go to, just any kind of miscellaneous notes, whether or not they like practice activities, and that just being Teach Piano Today I think it's called Your Piano Teacher Thinks This Is Practice, and some of my students love having those to do as practice activities, and some students really doesn't do them any good, or they could really care less to use those. So I kind of keep track of things like that, like what do they like, what do they not like. I sometimes keep track of the type of piano that they have, notes from evaluations from both the parent and the student. This is actually kind of a layout that I got from Joy Morin. She wrote a blog post on this maybe last year, I think. And this would be like where I would type books that I want the student to use next. Technique books, sight reading, curriculum. This is supplemental materials, theory books, and Christmas. So that, like for example, at Christmas time, I hate always trying to go, now what book did the students use last year? Did they finish that book? Could they play from it again? Or what? So this helps me just know what they have. If I loaned a book to a student like this, I write loaner. That way I remember that the student doesn't actually own that book. The current book that they're working on is underlined. And I order the books from most current to the oldest at the bottom. Let's see. So the next thing I want to show you is recital programs. After my recitals, I scan in the program, and then in that one note, I tag the name of every single student who participated. And then this is, again, like kind of like a student record or a student portfolio. It keeps track of things that they've participated in. Here I have the student's evaluation form, and I love doing this in Evernote because what I do for the next year, all I do is I come in and I duplicate the note, and then I would just change the date to 2017, and then it would just help me see, what was evaluated last year, any kind of notes that I've written. And it's kind of neat during the evaluation time to say, hey, Tim, I noted that last year I said you were struggling with rhythm, but this year you've really, really improved. Sometimes you just forget about those kinds of things, so it's great to have a continuous record of evaluations. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is, again, there's that musical Mother's Day card I had pointed out before. But this student loves to compose, and so she enters a lot of composition festivals with my state, and all of her entries I save in a note along with a MIDI file, and the results, and all kinds of different things. This is a practice survey that the students did at the end of the year that I could reference back to later. Let's see. This student she wrote me a letter a couple of years ago, and I kept it, hung up for quite a while, and then decided I didn't want to lose track of it. I do keep those things in a file, but I just took a photo of it and then tagged it with the student's name, and I can reference that. And it's just kind of fun to peek at those every once in a while and remember those kind words that students say. Let's see. This is a high school student who loves to sing and is, really wants to just learn piano to sing and play in church. And so we do a lot of chord charts. And so I've just kept track of all the specific ones that I've given her so far. One thing I think I forgot to mention before in the books is that I do write down the starting and the ending dates for when the student, has started the material and then finished it. It kind of helps give me a good overview for how long it took them to finish a book. Let's see. Here's an adult student, and there's a note here that I took at a conference the session was about young students and adult students, and so I tagged this note under conference sessions as well as tagged it with each of my adult students' names, so I can use that for reference if I ever need. I have a student that I did a video recording of, and honestly I do quite a few videos of my students, not a ton, but I really haven't been very good about saving them into Evernote, but I did happen to do this one, so I'm going to show you. I just took a video of it, and then I saved the file here into the student's tag, so now that will kind of be there as her history. So that is something that's possible. And this is what was I going to show here? Oh, I know. During the lesson one day, I was just thinking about this student and thought, you know what, she has really improved and she's really doing a good job finding her hand positions quickly. And so I just made a fast note. I wrote it down on a piece of paper during the lesson as I was thinking about it. And then later on, I just went into Evernote and made a note and tagged it with her name. And now when evaluation time comes, that's just, sometimes evaluation comes and you have to think about all these things the last week of school, and I like to try to do as much as I can thinking about those things throughout the school year and then making brief notes so that when the time comes, I have some things to reference that I can get through those evaluations quickly. All right, so those are all my active students and the types of things that I tag under my students. You can see I also have my students inactive as well, and it's the same thing. So if they leave lessons, then I just drag their notes underneath students inactive. Okay, so I hope today I've convinced you to give Evernote a try, or if you're already using it, I hope you were inspired with lots of ideas to help you organize your studio more effectively. The way I organize my Evernote is ever evolving. It's what works for me. Take what I've given you today and just make it your own. What works for me may not work for you. My setup has been perfected and tweaked continuously for the past 4 years. So play with it, modify it for your studio in life. There's not a day that goes by that I don't use Evernote. In later videos, I'll be talking about some of the nitty-gritty, including different account levels and which may work best for you. We'll look at the way it's laid out in a little more detail, including its amazing search ability and why I think tags are better a better way of organizing it than notebooks. I'll even walk you through more amazing Evernote tools and integrated apps, including the amazing web clipper. I have so much to share with you guys, so stay tuned.